Peter Greenberg's live global travel update is presented to you by Air Tahiti Nui. The voyage continues. Connecting Tahiti to the world for over 25 years with daily flights from the U.S.
Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday. Peter Greenberg here with our global travel update. Today from French Polynesia and the island of Tetiaroa. For those of you who've done your homework, you know that that's the island once owned by the legendary actor Marlon Brando. It's not just one island, it's a series of 11 motus, all well protected, and probably the most interesting and remarkable resort I've ever stayed in, simply because it's intentionally luxurious and still off the grid. Imagine everything here is sustainable and fully cycled, meaning power is solar. If they need generators, it runs on vegetable oil. Air conditioning comes from the ocean. They have pipes dug down nearly a half a mile where the water temperature is about 36 degrees, and that's what cools everything here, right? With no electrical expense. Everything is sustainable, everything is recycled, and everything is just amazing, which was really Marlon Brando's original idea when he got the island nearly 60 years ago for a remarkable price of under $500,000. It's all run by a visionary, a guy named Richard Bailey, who has been on the islands for many, many years and figured out the technology. And because it's now a role model for so many resorts around the world, so that we're not dealing with mission statements of corporations talking about what they are doing and will be doing. This is actually a mission, and guests get involved. They even have scientists. They have a scientific research station here. They are working very closely, believe it or not, they're very close to eradicating all the mosquitoes. And what they've done here becomes a role model for everywhere else. They've literally eradicated all the rats. And guess what? It all works. More on that, of course, as part of our show that we're doing for PBS called Hidden Tahiti. That's why we're here, but we're also here today to do global travel updates. So let's get to the news. Lots of things to talk about. Of course, the government shutdown continues. The number of flight delays and cancellations continues to rise. As recently as last Sunday, more than 5,800 flights were delayed. And it's even crazier. In 20% of American and Southwest flights were delayed as well. Clearly tied back to what? Air traffic controller shortages. Now, this is nothing new. Predating the shutdown, there are already 3,500 traffic controllers already short. There are only 2 air traffic control facilities that were fully staffed, which meant that at every other facility prior to the shutdown, the controllers were being forced to work mandatory overtime. How absurd is that? Now it's even worse. And with today is the 23rd of October, in 5 days, the controllers are not getting a paycheck. The number of sick calls increases. The government threatens to fire them. My question is, and replace them with who? Remember, the FAA just proudly announced a couple of weeks ago that they had hired 2,000 new trainees, emphasis on the word trainees, for air traffic controller jobs. But this is not a learn while you earn situation. They have a 2-year learning curve before they're ever allowed to sit at a console and control the traffic. So the only option the FAA has in a situation like this is to slow everything down. In the last 3 weeks, I have not been on a single airplane that wasn't delayed at least 45 minutes to an hour on the ground because ATC would not release them into the air because they didn't have the staff to control them. So you're going to see a couple of things. You're going to see not only a slowdown in flow, but delays that basically, trickle down and then tumble down, because if planes can't take off, the planes that are landing have nowhere to go in terms of finding gate space or even crossing runways or taxiways. Now, the good news is, of course, in the fourth quarter, it's usually lower traffic levels, right? Fourth quarter season. But what's coming up in less than a month, right? The Thanksgiving holiday period followed by Christmas. And this year, the number of people traveling as of today is outpacing last year, which was a record year, by 2%. So the numbers are there. Question is, can the system support it? Obviously, a story that we're going to continue to work on as these days continue, but no signs yet of any kind of a solution. Trump's administration has said they're looking for $500 million to cover the paychecks. That's for this month. Where they're going to find the money legitimately and legally, we don't know. There are bills now pending in Congress to get essential workers paid. We're not just talking about ATC, but we're talking about TSA, Customs and Border Protection, even national parks. That's not even come out of committee yet. So let's see how fast Congress is going to move. So far, they haven't moved very fast at all. Okay, a couple of other things I want to get to before we get to your questions. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago about passenger rights when your flights are delayed and canceled, as in now, right? And what rights do you have in the US? Very few. In Europe, they have EC Rule 261. If your flight is canceled, delayed by anything other than weather, you get immediate compensation on the spot, not just for a $10 voucher for a bad Aunt Annie's pretzel, but accommodations, meals, other transportation. It's a law. It's a European Union regulation. In the United States, we have very general mission statements by airlines that are not bound by any of that. I was in Bulgaria 3 weeks ago, and I'm going to show you a sign I saw. Put that sign up. It's coming. There it is. Can you read it? It's basically a public service announcement by a private sector company saying, if your flight is delayed or canceled, just call us. We'll get you your money right away. They'll get a percentage of that. There's another company out there called AirHelp. It's the same deal. It's enforcing the EC 261 rule, and people are actually getting money that they deserve. Anyway, that was just in Bulgaria. They can do it. Somehow in the United States, we can't even get arrested for that. It's too bad. And it's long, long, long overdue. Another thing I want to talk to you about is the arms race that's happening with elite, heavily perked credit cards. We're talking American Express, Chase Sapphire Reserve, Capital One Venture. I mean, with annual fees that are pretty staggering, ranging from $395 to nearly $900 for the Platinum card. And everybody seems to want to go get one because they're seduced by the perks. You get lounge access. You get extra points that you can maybe or maybe not redeem. You get credits for Uber, Saks Fifth Avenue, DoorDash. It goes on and on and on. Very seductive, but you're going to have to actually go through this one by one, read all the fine print to see that if you're really getting the value that you're getting for that $895 or less, whatever that is. Otherwise, it becomes essentially one of those expensive gym memberships where you never use it, but you thought you would. Now, there are some of these benefits that make sense, right? You get dining credits, but you got to eat at those restaurants and make reservations through them. You get travel kickbacks if you make reservations through their portal. But then the question becomes, if you do make an airline reservation through their portal, are you paying more for the ticket than you would if you booked directly with the airline? All these things have to be taken into consideration. Our good friend Gary Leff, who writes viewfromthewing.com, which everybody should be reading, has a pretty good breakdown of the pros and the cons for every single card. You need to look at that before you jump and sign on, okay? But the perks are out there. You just got to make sure what actually works for your lifestyle. And please try to be realistic and then realize whether or not it's really worth the investment of nearly $900 in some cases to get perks you may or may not ever use. Okay, so on that. Now, this is the one we've talked about for a long time. Do solo travelers or business travelers get discriminated against in terms of pricing by airlines? The major airlines will tell you, oh no, we don't do that. Really? Let me tell you what The Economist magazine just did. They just surveyed 19,000 prices over 3,200 routes. And guess what they found? That solo travelers, the airline might interpret that as business travelers, paid more on 57% of American Airlines flights. And then they did price comparisons on some routes. And on one route, a single passenger flying midweek, the presumption being he's a business traveler or she's a business traveler who's got to go, is paying $811 round trip. But if that person was traveling with somebody like a significant other, the price dropped to $565 per passenger. Yikes. And if they came back on a Saturday, presumably a day that business travelers don't fly, drops to $497 a passenger. This goes back, for those of us old enough to remember, to the dreaded Saturday night stay requirement if you wanted to get a discounted ticket, discriminating against business travelers again. What did that launch? The whole idea of the back-to-back ticket, which, by the way, I still use. It doesn't violate any carrier contract or any kind of rule. And here's how it works. Let's say I need to go, and I'm an individual business traveler, and I need to go from New York to Los Angeles on a Tuesday, but I need to come back on Friday. No discounts. I'm already being discriminated against. So let's say the ticket's $1,000. I go back online and I book my outbound ticket for Tuesday, the day I'm going, and I book a return ticket 2 weeks later on a Tuesday. That ticket drops to $400. Now I go out and buy a second reservation for the Friday I'm coming back, going from Los Angeles to New York round trip, leaving that Friday and coming back 2 weeks later with enough days to have another trip to LA. That ticket drops to $400. So for less than the cost of one ticket, I get 2 round trips, and if I'm so inclined, double the mileage. Now, the airlines will say, oh, I violated some terms of conditions. I have not. I'm flying on my name, it's me, on the dates and times specified by that ticket, and I'm showing up. The airlines have tried to accuse me of doing something wrong. They've tried to threaten me, and every time they've done it, I ask them this question. If I buy a 6-pack of Diet Coke and I don't drink all 3 bottles, I leave 3 left, does the Diet Coke police come and arrest me? They do not. If I buy a ticket to the movie and I leave early, hey, I'm not penalized. In many cases, I benefit. But as long as I'm flying on the dates and times and flights specified on that ticket, and it's me and I paid for it, come arrest me. The lawsuit that will follow from me will be staggering. But this all started 20 years ago with that dreaded Saturday night stay requirement to basically discriminate against business travelers who didn't fly on a Saturday or Sunday, right? Or didn't stay over. We're back to the same deal again with solo traveler pricing. Now, in The Economist, in their survey, they found that United and Delta didn't do it as much as American, but they also suggest one other thing because their survey showed them something else. And that is when you're pricing out a ticket, see if the airline that you're on is competing on that same route with either Southwest or Frontier, and you'll see lower fares simply because they want to meet them. All right. When there's that competition in the marketplace, the fares drop. So a couple of things to think about before you book your next ticket. Okay. Now, I may be in Tahiti, but guess what's going to be premiering next month on PBS, Amazon, Apple TV, and YouTube? Our special on Hidden Malta. And here's a segment about the hidden Hollywood that's part of Hidden Malta. Coming soon on PBS, Hidden Malta, and a surprising history of Hollywood magic. Fort Ricasoli has been transformed into the ultimate studio backlot, bringing ancient Rome to life. And it all started in 2000 with the blockbuster Gladiator.
The Gladiator production used this place to build Rome, the Colosseum, the prisons.
After the success of Gladiator, other producers flocked to Malta to shoot their own sword and sandal epics.
Producers start saying that the potential of the fort is so immense and it's basically a ready-to-shoot location.
In fact, Ridley Scott even returned to the islands to shoot Gladiator 2. And those sets are still here today. Just part of what you'll see on Hidden Malta. That's just the Hollywood part, but there's so much more to see in Malta that it's not a surprise that every ruling warrior nation wanted to take Malta, right? The Phoenicians, the Ottomans, the Byzantines, Napoleon, they all left their mark there, and that's all still standing today. Most of those sets weren't built by Hollywood. They were built by the people who lived there back 400, 500, 600 years ago or longer. So check out the show, check your local listings. It's also going to be airing on Amazon Prime, Apple TV Plus, and YouTube as well. Okay, now this is a survey that I just found that goes back a few years, but it really puts things in perspective about who we are as travelers, where we're going, and most importantly, where we're not going. Listen to this. They surveyed 2,000 Americans to get an idea of our travel experiences and to find out why we aren't traveling more. The results, pretty damning and embarrassing. 11% of those surveyed, of the 2,000 people surveyed, said they'd never traveled outside of the state where they were born. Wow. 54% of those surveyed have visited 10 states or less. 13%, this is the wild one, of the people who took the survey said they'd never flown on a plane. This is America. By the way, American Airlines released a statistic about 2 years ago that said that 84% of the people who flew the airline that year only took the airline once. That'll give you an idea about who's a frequent flyer and who isn't. And then the one that's the most staggering, this is the one I have no explanation for it. 10% of the people surveyed said they have no interest in going anywhere. Now, those are the people I want to know. Not, oh my God, let's talk about a lack of curiosity. Speaking of people who've never traveled anywhere, I saw this bin the other day at Chicago's O'Hare Airport, which gives you an idea of how many people aren't traveling and news they need to know. Look at this bin. That's right out there in the open, the cannabis amnesty box. What people don't realize is where marijuana may be legal in your state, when you're in an airport, you're essentially on federal property. It ain't legal there. And if you're crossing state lines, you may have a huge legal problem. That's what that box is doing there. You'll find boxes like that at the Denver airport as well. And we've seen this happen time and time again, not just at airports, but people driving from Denver to LA, crossing the border, let's say into Arizona, the cops are waiting to pull you over maybe for a taillight infraction just to see if you've got any marijuana in the car, because there, it ain't legal. Interesting story there. That's why that box is there at the airport. All right, moving along. Is there such a thing as a great coach seat? Think about it. What determines a great coach seat? Now, we all know about the exit row. While the seat doesn't necessarily recline, you do get more leg room, and your knees are not exactly permanently wedged against your neck, right? We know about the bulkhead seats, especially if you're traveling with kids, so that if they're going to kick something, they're not kicking the person in front of them, they're kicking the bulkhead. But a couple of years ago, a flight attendant on Air New Zealand came up with an innovative coach seat called Cuddle Class. It's for a couple that essentially is buying 3 seats in coach, and the seats recline in such a way that they really get their own little bed. It's not the most comfortable way to do a long haul flight, but it's a pretty good idea, and it works. But now Air New Zealand has gone one step beyond, they think, in coming up with a new seat. And the question is, for coach passengers, not for anybody else, not for premium economy, not for business, not for first, even if first exists. These are lie flat bunk beds that coach passengers can rent on those ultra long haul flights. I think there are like 8 of them, or maybe 6 of them on the flight. But here's the thing that's crazy. Obviously, it's an additional premium price that you pay over and above your coach ticket. But here's the thing that makes no sense to me. You can either rent it for your rest immediately after takeoff, during the flight, or before landing. And they limit you to 4 hours. That's what you're paying the rent for. And then you don't get a second chance. You can't go another 4 hours. It's just 4 hours. And the range of the rent is going to be between $400 and $600 per bed, per passenger, per 1 4-hour period. You know what? In my book, I love the idea of the bunk beds. I love the idea that you could rent them, but you want to rent them for the whole flight. Who wants to go to sleep for 4 hours and then get woken up, and then you have nothing else to do except go back to your coach seat? In my book, I love the design of the beds. I love the concept of the beds, the concept of the pricing and the time limitations. Here's our pun: it ain't gonna fly. But at least the cuddle class seats are working. The bunk beds for an hourly rental rate with a time limitation, not so sure. Okay, let's scroll down and say hello to some folks. We've got Priya saying hi. We've got Linda saying hi from Naples, having been all over the world. If you were to take a vacation, no research or work, where would you go and why? Well, I know I'm working here at Tetiaroa on Marlon Brando's island called the Brando. We've been shooting 18-hour days. But if I had 4 days where I wasn't working, boy, would I want to stay here. I mean, you're totally off the grid. I have Wi-Fi. I'm talking to you. But I have the option of Wi-Fi. That means I don't have to be on it 24/7. And this is a place where you don't hear noise, except for the birds and the sea life and the waves coming in off of the reef. That's it. An amazing island, an amazing resort. And I'm not just saying that because I'm here. I've been coming to Tahiti since, I hate to say it, 1981. I found it then, and I find it now to be, oh my goodness, it's my best sedative, right? It's where I sleep the best. It's one of those places where I sleep the best. And you've heard me say this before, where you sleep the best is where you think the best, where you create the best, where you love the best, where you aspire to return. And anywhere you can, I mean, I have about 20 of those places. This is one of them where I actually sleep the best. Check it out. It's unbelievable. All right. Jim and Harriet saying, hey, oh, they're in Fogo in Cape Verde. Have you been to Cape Verde Islands? Yes, I have. Anybody want to tell me where they are? Off the coast of South Africa. And what's interesting about Cape Verde, in the old days, when even the 747s, those models didn't have the range, Cape Verde was their refueling stop for flights going from South Africa to the United States. And most people, when they got to Cape Verde, didn't get off the plane. They refueled, they kept going. Smart passengers did get off the plane. They made it a stop. In fact, you know how I knew to make the stop? So many airplane pilots from South African Airways told me they had houses there. Why? Because it was so cool and so quiet. Here we go again, where you sleep the best. And the fishing was amazing. I'm sure you're having a great time there. Okay. Paul is saying, greetings from Ashland, Virginia. Recently returned from 3 weeks in France, 2 in Burgundy, 1 in Paris. Are we jealous or what? And you went at the right time of the year. Sue saying hi from Bellingham, Washington. Jeff is saying, heading to Sedona tomorrow for some hiking plus dark sky tourism, including a Lowell Observatory experience in Flagstaff. Do I have a favorite restaurant in Sedona? You know what, Jeff? I don't. For me, every time I go to Sedona, I'm trying to avoid pink crystals and pink Jeeps, with all due respect. And the airport in Sedona is one of the coolest in the world. Their lounge is one Barcalounger. That's it. And you're landing really on the top of a mountain. It's like landing on an ironing board, but you'll have fun. And the hiking there is great. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Patrick saying hello and good morning. Tim saying greetings from Atlanta. Camilla saying, oh, she gave me a little French Polynesian greeting from Tucson. Colleen saying, what do the initials HBB stand for on your baseball cap? Well, believe it or not, it's not HBB, it's HBG. They're the initials of my wife. I wear it in honor of her. Melanie says, hello from Miami. I have great memories of visiting Tahiti, Bora Bora, and Moorea with my late husband. Bill Moorea was actually our favorite. You know what? When I first came to Tahiti, you start in Papeete. By the way, everybody's flying here now. United's flying here now. An airline called French Bee out of San Francisco. United's out of San Francisco as well. You have, of course, Air Tahiti Nui. Delta did come here, they pulled out, but those are the 3 major airlines. And of course, let's not forget Air France. And when I first came here, I came on Pan Am, 747. And when I landed, I jumped on an old German freighter called the Toporo, an old rust bucket that went between the islands, and they left at night, navigating by the Southern Cross, and everybody was on deck with their ukuleles and singing. And it, by the way, those freighters still go between the islands. And by the way, if you haven't been, it's not just Huahine and Raiatea and Moorea and of course Bora Bora and Tahiti. Don't forget Taha. That's the hidden gem. Scott saying hello from Chicago. Hello, Scott. Tayo saying, what are your thoughts on digital ID? I've heard they'd roll this out at some airports and that it's faster than clear. Digital ID is just one more way of getting through security faster. I still happen to like clear because it puts you to the front of the TSA pre-check line. And in many cases that can be huge, especially if you're flying out of an airport like Orlando or Atlanta where Delta is there, because they're one of the partners of Clear. Okay. Is anybody in this current administration looking at how decreased tourism in the U.S. is hurting our overall economy? Yeah, we are. You know what our loss is in revenue since February this year? Over $25 billion in lost revenue to U.S. travel and tourism entities because of the drop in foreign tourism, right? That's part one. Compound that now with the last 3 or 4 weeks of the government shutdown, and there's an additional $1 billion a week in lost revenue that is not recoupable, as is the $25 billion. You can't. And at a certain point, the numbers have to add up. Okay, Joy saying, we booked a cruise on Norwegian, and once I booked the cruise, I read a lot of unfavorable reviews about this ship. In fact, most of the comments were negative from staff, customer service, food, pools, rooms, etc. There are only a few with positive reviews. We are seniors and would love to travel. We would have to travel 8 hours to get to this cruise ship. What would you do? Well, I don't depend on online reviews. I just don't. What I would do is, first of all, how did you book this cruise? Online or through a travel agent or a travel advisor? That's their job. Have a conversation with them. Let them do the research for you. Find out the ports that you're going. Another thing you need to know, when you're at any given port, how many of the cruise ships will be there on the day you're there? That will severely impact the quality of your experience. This is where you need to have a conversation and not just tick off a box and book online. Okay? Now, I've taken a number of Norwegian cruises without incident, without negative reviews, right? But the question is, you haven't told me the ship and you haven't told me the itinerary. So email me that, peter@petergreenberg.com, and we can have a conversation as well. Okay? All right. Alyssa's saying, hey, Peter. Well, right back to you, Alyssa. Michelle is saying, greetings from the National Park in Madagascar. Interesting story in Madagascar. It's still open for business. It's still open for travel and tourism. But the president fled last week, military coup. He's in some undisclosed location, but the country is still operating. And as far as travel and tourism is concerned, it is still business as usual. I remember, because I was there, the famous shootout at the mall in Nairobi in Kenya, and pretty intense. I was dodging bullets for at least a day and a half. A lot of people hurt. The terrorists ended up getting killed, of course, but the visuals were pretty intense, what we were broadcasting to the world. 4 blocks away, people were heading out to the Masai Mara, and it was business as usual. You need to put things in perspective. All right. All right, cannabis amnesty box. Thank you, Scott. Teddy's saying, greetings from LA. Is a 10-hour, 50-minute layover at the Frankfurt airport enough time to venture into Frankfurt? I'm going to give you a qualified maybe. Depends on what you want to do there and the airline you're flying, right? I'm assuming you're going to transit. Are you doing everything on Lufthansa? Do you need your bags during that time? Do you have to get your bags between flights, or are you checked all the way through? Give me that answer. I can give you an answer. Aloha, right back to Raymond. Okay. Colleen says, not a huge fan of Gauguin as a person, but I like his art. Is there a museum dedicated to his work where you are now? Not on this island, but you will see galleries throughout Tahiti and in the National Museum where you can see that work. Absolutely. Okay. If you love Taha, time to head to the Tuamotus. Oh, we're going to the Tuamotus, not to mention for part of our 1-hour special on Hidden Tahiti, we're going throughout French Polynesia to the Marquesas. That's unbelievable. Sue, is any favorite restaurants in Palm Springs, Palm Desert? You know what, Sue? Email me, peter@petergreenberg.com. Give me the type of food you like, and I'll give you some recommendations. Okay, Paul is saying, where is your French Polynesian shirt? You know what? What's the difference between a tourist and a traveler? I'm not wearing a French Polynesian shirt. This is the shirt I wear when I shoot my shows, which we're going out into the wild, right? Whether it's the jungles, whether it's the Serengeti, whether it's the desert, or whether it's here in Tahiti. It's just, this is my work clothes. Okay. Teddy says, I'm flying all the way with Lufthansa. My bags are checked through. Then the answer is yes, but only give yourself a 3-hour tour, right? You got to get back in and check in again. Okay? All right. Now, one more thing, and that is, of course, our photo of the week. Gotta love this photo. Where was it taken? Place we just were there, as a matter of fact. And congratulations to our winner, and that's Alex Wright. Alex Wright's a spectacular sunset on the coast of Croatia. I took this photograph while on a cruise on the Dalmatian coast. It's just beautiful. I hope you get a chance, or you did get a chance, to visit some of the other lesser known places on the Dalmatian coast, like the island of Rob, and not just Dubrovnik, and not just Split. Not to mention, not too far away is Montenegro. But love that photograph. Thank you so much, Alex, for doing that. And if you think you got a photo that qualifies as the photo of the week, that's an easy fix. Just email it to us at photocontest@petergreenberg.com. And if we like it, it goes right up there next to Alex's. Some other questions you sent in. This is from Gerald. My daughter's flying to Seoul, Korea in May of next year. Are there any tricks to getting a better cost on airfares? Yeah, you can go online now to do some price comparisons and do some shopping. If you see a fare that you like, do it now and then have Google Flights track it for you to see if a lower fare comes in after that. But unless you're competing in May of 26 with a major sporting event or national anniversary date, it's always a good idea to book it in advance. Edward says, my family and I, party of 5, are planning a trip to Johannesburg and a side trip to Chobe National Park in Botswana, Victoria Falls, in June. Do you have any advice? What vaccines, medications, and travel precautions are needed? Okay, first of all, you haven't told me how long you're going. Second of all, I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on TV, but your own personal physician can tell you what you need. Chances are they will recommend a malaria pill. There are different kinds, one that has many side effects, one that doesn't. Again, I'm not prescribing, I'm just pointing you in the right direction. And of course, there might be a yellow fever requirement, maybe even a tetanus. But have your doctor do that. And bottom line is, how are you getting there? It's one thing to fly to Johannesburg. It's another thing to get from Johannesburg to Botswana and back again. Inter-African travel can be somewhat complicated. They don't know really about open skies. In some cases, not all. If I'm in Botswana and I want to go to Nairobi, I got to go through London and backtrack. They haven't figured out in the 54 countries of Africa how to easily, seamlessly, and efficiently fly between countries. So email me more and I'll try to help you. Pamela says, my 2 children and their families and I have a trip planned for the first week of January to Cancun, and we're staying in an all-inclusive resort. My son-in-law is concerned about safety due to the cartels. Okay, I'm going to get to that in a second. My son and I have checked the threat level and feel we should be just fine. You know what? You're going to be just fine. First of all, you're staying at an all-inclusive resort, and unfortunately, most Americans never leave the resort once they get there. I'm a big fan of leaving the resort. But the cartels, look, is there gang violence in Mexico? Yeah. Hey, there's gang violence in Chicago. But the gang violence, at least in Mexico, is gang versus gang. Tourists have been off limits for a long, long time. I do that to reassure you, but I will never say anything without telling you to exercise basic common sense. Travel in groups. Don't call attention to yourselves anywhere you go in the world. Go back to that Tahitian shirt we just mentioned, and have a great time. You're going to be fine. Okay. Joyce says, does American Airlines have any nonstop flights to Rome from Philadelphia? If not, which airline does have it? Well, the answer is I'll give you a qualified yes. American does have a nonstop flight from Rome to Philadelphia, but in many cases it's seasonal. It may not operate all year round, and it may come up on your website as a British Airways flight, but guess what? It's operated as an American Airlines flight. Another example of a code share, which can get confusing. So check it out. Leaves about 9 o'clock in the evening and gets in around 6 o'clock the next morning in Rome. When it's operating. Laurel says, I'm taking a cruise out of New Orleans. We'll be flying on the 13th of February, just before Mardi Gras. When should we look for the best airfares? Well, you have a double-edged problem here. Number one, it's right before Mardi Gras. And number two, it's right before President's Weekend. The time to book that fare right now would be now. Okay? Because you're going to get hit by both. All right. There we have that. Of course, we're going out now to get on a small boat and head out to one of the isolated, uninhabited, but totally beautiful motus here in Tetiaroa from the Brando Resort. I encourage you to do some research on it. You'll see it featured as part of our 1 hour special next year on Hidden Tahiti, something well worth the watch, and most importantly, well worth the experience. I want to thank Anthony for handling the engineering today from another remote location right here in Tahiti. I want to thank you for watching. We'll see you next week from a surprise location, not French Polynesia, but about 8,000 miles from here. Bye, everybody.
Peter Greenberg's live global travel update is presented to you by Air Tahiti Nui. The voyage continues. Connecting Tahiti to the world for over 25 years with daily flights from the U.S.